Today, we're diving deep into an announcement from Trump himself and his little A-team about Stargate, a private company, as they so called it, that plans to invest $500 billion at least into building new AI facilities, all in America.
Announcing the formation of Stargate. So put that name down in your books, because I think you're going to hear a lot about it in the future. A new American company that will invest $500 billion at least in AI infrastructure in the United States. And
Stargate in that press conference was described as a company, but I believe this is going to be more of a co-owned asset by all of the companies that invest in the project. It sounds like most of that money, $500 billion in the next 4 years, seems to be coming from places like SoftBank and also Oracle and OpenAI, which is, majorly owned by Microsoft. In terms of Stargate's details, as we currently know of, they are planning to build data centers. So think of this as the hardware that drives a lot of the online business that we do today. Yes, it does your artificial intelligence work, but it also does things like data storage and also online data security. The plan for that big $500 billion chunk of money is to build 10 different data centers, and that's said to create around 100,000 American jobs. And we did get a hint of one location where some of those data centers could be built, and they named Texas. Not only will the companies building those data centers see a really big benefit in the next few years, but eventually when they're finished, you're going to see the Microsofts, the Oracles, and whoever else is going to invest in these projects also rein the benefits in. The one major question I did have was the role of the US government in this project. Now, I'll get to exactly what Trump said in the press conference soon, but there was no mention about whether the American people will own some of this project, because they did mention a major benefit would be in healthcare, about identifying cancers and creating vaccines that could actually pinpoint and target and kill cancers through mRNA vaccines, which is the same vaccine as the recent one in 2020. But it's not clear at this stage whether the American people will benefit from this investment deal directly. Will we still have to pay, for example, Microsofts and Oracles to gain access to those benefits for just everyday people? Let's now put into perspective how important this Stargate deal really is. Let's compare that $500 billion in 4 years, that's the current amount promised, to the amount of capital expenditures on AI facilities just by the big tech companies. Think of your Microsofts, Amazons, and Facebooks. Current number being thrown around is about 200 to 250 billion US dollars per year, and that's expected to grow at an annual rate of around 30 to 60% depending on who you listen to. Straight away, we're looking at around a 30 to 50% boost in AI spending because of this Stargate project, but also keep in mind that Facebook and Amazon, they don't have to build those data centers in the United States. They're jumping onto a website called datacenters.com, so it has to be trustworthy. If we have a look just at Amazon's locations of data centers, yes, they have around 170 in North America, but you also have places like in Europe, Australia, Indonesia, China, and Japan, a bit in South America as well. They're spread out everywhere. So the good news about American companies and American workers is this Stargate project is going to be centered in the United States, whereas a lot of these big tech companies and spending their money, about a third of it is going overseas. Another thing to keep in mind is the money that's being pivoted towards this Stargate project. I'm thinking more about OpenAI, which is owned by Microsoft, or at least 49% of the profits are promised to Microsoft. Microsoft, before this Stargate project was announced, was already looking at spending $80 billion this year, but OpenAI, again, Microsoft, is looking at putting in initially $100 billion immediately. So that's 2025 investment. Now, it's not clear currently how much of that $500 billion that Stargate is promising was already planned for 2025 and, the next 4 years. How much of that is actually new spending? Nobody really knows these numbers just yet. One final comment before I get to the impact on the stock market is just what exactly is Trump promising that is encouraging this investment from within the United States, but also from overseas?
I'm going to help a lot through emergency declarations because we have an emergency. We have to get this stuff built. So they have to produce a lot of electricity, and we'll make it possible for them to get that production done very easily at their own plants if they want, where they'll build at the plant, the AI plant, they'll build energy generation.
These data centers currently use around 1 to 3% of the total world's energy usage. So this promise from Trump to help basically create pipelines of energy into these facilities, nuclear reactors, which is what big tech companies are currently investing in. You know, the drill baby drill comment from Trump. Maybe it's that policy, cheap oil energy, that is going to be pumped towards these new data centers. At this stage, obviously, it's going to be a boon or a positive for the entire stock market on this news, but also just looking at the people building the data centers, giving down a data center market share picture about who receives the revenue. This was last updated at the beginning of 2024. Nvidia is still getting around 70% of total revenue from data center construction. Now, that's a bit different to the 90% number we usually get thrown around, because we must consider there are two types of computer chips that are basically just put in these giant buildings. We have the fancy GPU chips that do the more bulkier work, the more dense work, training artificial intelligence. That's where Nvidia has a giant 90% market share. But then we have the AMDs and Intel, which just do the bulkier work. Basically, every time you make an AI request, that's called inference, just the doing of AI. And that market share is handled 50-50 currently by Intel and also AMD. Now, the one thing I will update about this market share chart hasn't really been updated recently. Intel's market share has continued to be eaten up by AMD. So in terms of data center market share, you're looking at around 70% Nvidia, around 13% each Intel and AMD, and then Broadcom is not quite in there just yet. They have low single digit market share. I also want to thank my YouTube members who help keep the channel running. Thanks for your time, guys. See you next time. Bye.